Okay, go ahead, Cheryl. We can start now. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Cheryl Blackman, Director of Museums and Heritage Services at the City of Toronto. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge the land that we are meeting on is a traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This morning, you will hear about a new program at Toronto History Museums called Awakenings from Mayor John Tory and Deputy Mayor Michael Thompson, representing Scarborough Centre and Chair of the Economic and Community Development Committee, along with renowned director Julian Christian Lutz, professionally known as Director X, and choreographer AC Mensah, who worked closely with Wayne Mengisha, artistic director at Soulpepper Theatre Company. This announcement would not be possible without the support of the newly formed Awakenings Task Force. The task force was established during the pandemic to develop within the 10 Toronto History Museums programming that aligns to our new commitment to present diverse perspectives and include stories from communities of Black, Indigenous, and people of color, since these stories are often left out of narratives in museums. Through our Awakening programming, diverse voices will be foregrounded within Fort York National Historic Site, Holborn Lodge, the Market Gallery, Mackenzie House, Gibson House Museum, Montgomery's Inn, Scarborough Museum, Zion Schoolhouse, Todmorden Mills, and Spadina Museum. The Awakenings Task Force includes Ashley Mackenzie Barnes, curator, Dr. Mark V. Campbell, creative and scholar, Natasha Henry, president of the Ontario Black History Society, Julian Christian Lutz, PKA Director X Director, Wayne Mengisha, Artistic Director at Soulpepper Theatre Company, Roger Mooking, Food Network host, restaurateur, author, and award-winning recording artist, Dr. Julie Nagum, curatorial and museology specialist for the City of Toronto. The curators and the site staff at the 10 museums have been on a journey to support this approach, led by the creative vision of Umberine Iniet, who has brought her focus of inclusive programming to the execution of this project. Umberine is available on standby if there are specific artistic development questions of the Awakenings program. Thanks once again for joining us this morning. And without further delay, we have a brief special presentation.
Mandingo, I'm a working stiff, working with shoulder weight super heavy, I'm working a lift. Feels impossible, another obstacle. I don't fold, not good at doing what I'm told. Skull thick, skull cap won't fit. True confessional, my preacher's pulpit. My shoes got no treads, holes in them socks, and watch too much to not work round then clocks. Hungry like wolves into the rands, then bite the hand, turn a blind eye if the preacher can. I try to live a peaceful life, but come at me would be folly to me, don't only leave you right. Short patience, like a dwarf doctor. Son, I'm not your father like the force gotcha. You better bite your tongue like the cat caught ya. Spades of high notes smell like a black opera. It's like, no justice, no peace, no justice, no peace.
It can be a look, it can be a moment, it can be a, you know what I'm saying? You know what it is, and emotionally it's there.
Only. So, making my own lane, built to last, the runaway train.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. I think I'm supposed to speak now. It's always difficult. Nobody's around to cue you on these virtual presentations, but I think that video just gives you a bit of a taste of what Awakenings is going to produce for us. And you know, Cheryl used the expression that these things are going to be in the foreground at places like Fort York and so on. You know, we're now going to put them right in front of people. I mean, to use even plainer language and take stories that have often been obscured. I don't think deliberately, but they've just been obscured because we didn't treat them as much a part of our history going back, but also our history today as to how we got to where we are. And I think that's why today is so important. And so I want to welcome everybody. I want to in particular say how pleased I am to be here with Deputy Mayor Michael Thompson, who we'll hear from in a couple of moments, as well as with choreographer Essie Mensah and of course Julian Christian Lutz. And I don't know him by that name, although that is his name. I know him as Director X, and one of our proudest citizens of this city that does us so proud in terms of everything that he's doing both at home and outside the city. And we're here today to make a very exciting announcement that is part of the city's various initiatives to address anti-Black racism and to make the arts and culture sector itself more equitable and more inclusive. If you sort of look at the fact that really one of the things that we've focused ourselves on now is to make our city more inclusive and to make it more admired around the world for some of the good things that we have done in terms of our foundational values. The arts and culture sector is a great place where we can achieve even more in that area, make ourselves more admired and make ourselves more inclusive. Awakenings is a virtual series that consists of art projects within Toronto's history museums by Black, Indigenous, and artists of color. And I'm proud to say that those some of those initiatives, those projects are now available online, and I'll talk a little bit about them this morning before we hear from both Deputy Mayor Thompson and from Director X. It's a new programming philosophy that will feature art projects that explore untold stories, those stories that need to be brought, up to the surface and put in the window, as it were. And that will help us to awaken a new perspective and invite the public to join the conversation through the arts and culture sector and through these projects, a conversation that is not only relevant, but much needed, as we know. These critical projects will be released over the next couple of years and reaffirm the city's commitment to invest and to build up the arts and culture sector generally, but also to make sure that BIPOC residents and artists can thrive and succeed within that sector. Because again, like in so many areas of life in the city, they have been underrepresented historically, and we're now, taking steps to remedy that kind of oversight that has happened for a long time. Despite the ongoing pandemic and having to shift our priorities to respond to it, we haven't lost sight of the core goals that are so important to us in the city. Over the summer, at the height of the pandemic, a call to end anti-Black racism was made not only within the city, but around the world. And the call was loud and clear, and it represented an unprecedented consensus on the part of people who live here and people who live elsewhere. But people who live here are the ones that we're focused on today. And the call said to us, and we said to each other, those of us in positions of responsibility, including the deputy mayor and myself, we need to do more and we need to do better. Every city and government does, but I want to acknowledge in the case of Toronto, where I'm the mayor and where Michael Thompson is the deputy mayor, this isn't something new for us, but perhaps the summer's events resulted in a reaffirmation of something that we had said some time ago as to how we have to do more and better. We've made great strides, starting with our acknowledging that anti-Black racism, for example, and anti-Indigenous racism are present in the city, unfortunately, together with other kinds of racism and discrimination. And while we've done a job that is, well thought of around the world, we have much, much more to do. And it began with that acknowledgement and then followed on, for example, with the establishment of our Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit, the first of its kind in all of North America. And city staff are working in a number of areas, including this one, to demonstrate our commitment to advancing our progress on this issue. It isn't just in the policing or in other places in government where we've seen racism and discrimination still prevalent. It's systemic, it's historic, it pervades all facets of the city, whether it's the tech sector or whether it's we've seen recently a discussion that I helped to initiate with the deputy mayor in the construction sector. You could start naming the list, but the list is unfortunately all inclusive. And this is why we have to take this on and use the consensus we've developed to take it on with vigor. And it's critical to say that as a city that we not only talk about, but we actually find ways to continue to address systemic racism within the services that we provide and in the city as a whole in terms of our foundational values and the things we're committed to together collectively as a population. So the Awakenings program at the Toronto History Museums will help to address the historic gaps that exist in programming and in representation. And I ask you to think about that for a moment. How aware are you? How aware are you, if you're watching this, if you're seeing this, if you're seeing it through the media, of some of the stories and the contributions and the sacrifices and the tragedies that have confronted our BIPOC communities, the Black and Indigenous and people from racialized communities? How aware are you of those stories? I often say that when we have Black History Month, for example, that it is necessary and appropriate to have that because, of course, Black history is a part of our history, but also because so many of the stories, the contributions, the unfairnesses are unknown to people. They haven't taught them in school to the degree that they should, and I think that's being remedied now. So in July, the City of Toronto committed more than $1.2 million in cultural and economic investments to confront anti-Black racism. $1.2 million just in the area of cultural and economic investments. And the unit that I referred to earlier, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit, have been working to develop opportunities such as this to increase opportunities for people to tell their stories, the good stories and the ones that are not so good, the ones we can be proud of and the ones we shouldn't be proud of, but we should know about them. And this will now find its way into our history museums so that we can find different ways in which to program and to evaluate the kind of programming in those museums. And so the focus now becomes on co-creating and co-developing programs with community partners and actively seeking ways to find a new balance in terms of that programming and what it consists of, what the stories are, what the exhibits are that people go to see in those museums, which are in some respects at the front door of the city for both residents and visitors alike, and to make sure that we share the entire history of our city with people going way back, but also right up to the present. And so the Awakenings program, 80% of the creative people involved in the projects are from the Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. And that's an important fact to register. This month, the Awakenings program will launch 3 online art projects and will also feature Awakenings reflections, behind the scenes discussions about these kinds of things, because it isn't just important to go see things at museums or see them online, but to talk about them as well. And I want to assure you that all of the Awakenings films that were made during the 2020 summer and fall season were compliant with public health guidelines that were in place at the time, because I even got a question on television this morning about all the film production that's going on in Toronto. And I assure you, all of those people who are creating such good in our city in so many respects, including these projects, are following very strict rules with respect to the public health guidelines. And I want to thank everybody involved for finding a way for the Awakenings projects and all the other film and television projects in the city to find a way to do those projects safely, but to do them nonetheless. I want to just share a little bit more information on these upcoming exciting projects. The first art project, called Behind the Curtain, is a conversation with award-winning hip-hop recording artist and broadcaster Shad and producer and multidisciplinary artist Byron Kent Wong. Roger Mooking reflects on the effects of racism on mental health, a serious issue that we've had to confront during the pandemic. And he shares untold stories of his experiences growing up in the Canadian prairies and working in the American South. And that conversation explores how food and art and music formed his journey. And part 1 launches today and part 2 launches in January. Behind the Curtain was filmed at Toronto History Museum's Montgomery Inn out in the West End, where there's a very proud sculpture done by a Black Torontonian as well that, again, marks part of our history. The second art project is called A Revolution of Love, which is a digital short film that follows a young Black woman as she grapples with the histories of her ancestors and the present day violence within her community, and begins to imagine what her future looks like through dance. Conceived by an internationally recognized Black creative team and featuring the words of Assata Shakur, this piece spotlights 15 women as they come together to reframe revolution in the name of love. A Revolution of Love was again filmed in Toronto at Fort York National Historic Site. And I'm delighted that we will hear from the choreographer, AC Mensa, shortly. The third art project, We Were Always Here, Director X, is a project of his. He mentored 10 emerging Toronto-based Black, Indigenous, and people of color filmmakers. So when I say it's his, he was the leader of that team and the mentor for that team. And he mentored them to present short films that aim to disrupt and to discover and to reveal colonial narratives. Each of the filmmakers focuses on one of the 10 Toronto History Museums to bring to light untold stories. 5 of these films will launch this month, 5 of the 10 in that series, and we'll hear from Director X about that project in just a moment. The city has aligned the Awakenings program to meet the goals of the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent, 2015 to 2024. Recognition, justice. The Awakenings program information and lineup is available at toronto.ca/museums. So I hope people will go and have a look at the full program, because I've just been able to give a taste of what some of the projects that are there. And even more Awakenings program will be available in 2021 beyond the 3 exciting projects that I've made mention of today, and that you'll hear more about from Director X, at least one of them. I really hope the people of Toronto see the value of this kind of programming. It's value that builds up our values, and that reminds us of our values, and reminds us of the need for us to make sure we're living those values, not just talking about them or reading what other people say about them from around the world, because we have work to do here. This is work that I'm deeply committed to as mayor, because there is nothing more fundamental to the success, ultimately the real success of this city, for ourselves, forgetting what the rest of the world thinks, but there's nothing more fundamental than for us to attack anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous racism, and to bring people together and make sure BIPOC people are fully included. These stories, by providing a platform for them, by making sure they're represented well in our museums and so on, it'll give us a deeper sense of community, a deeper sense of understanding, of empathy, of belonging for those who have for far too long been at the margins when it comes to even this city, where I think we've done better than some places. No room for complacency, but I think we've done better. But we have better yet to do. And that's what this project is all about, and why it's important to talk about it, even in this year when we have so many crises on our hands. So I would now like to, on that note, invite somebody who has been, a great conscience for the city on this, a great leader for a long time on this, and somebody who speaks up and certainly helps me to make sure we keep this front and center in all that the city does every day, pandemic or not. And that is our Deputy Mayor and the Chair of the Economic Development and Culture Committee, Michael Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Tory, and good morning, everyone. Mayor Tory, I would like to just express my great gratitude and thanks for your leadership and advocacy on this very important issue. You're right when you say that this has important value for all of us, and without your leadership and those of our staff team, I don't think that we would be where we are today. So I really want to profoundly thank you for your good leadership on this. So again, good morning, everyone. The New Awakenings program we are launching today is in fact well worth celebrating. In accordance with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action in museum sector, the Toronto History Museum sites are embracing partnerships that embodies Indigenous voices, stories, and knowledge into programs, collection management, and sites. The new programming that results from this transformation uniquely utilizes artists' expertise in creating accessible content. It will engage people to join the conversation and exchange the way history is seen and experienced. The city is proud to welcome 106.5 Element FM Toronto as a media partner for the Awakenings program. Program information is available at toronto.ca/museums. Additional Awakenings programs will be available in early 2021. In addition to Awakenings, the public can now gain access to Toronto History Museums, fine arts, and artifact collections through an online virtual database available at toronto.ca/museum. The collection consists of 150,000 artifacts, 1.1 million archaeological specimens, and 3,000 work of art, reflecting 11,000 year span of human occupation in the Toronto area. Also online, people can shop from home for the gift-giving season through the museum shop, powered by Shopify and the City of Toronto's Digital Main Street program. On offer are unique items inspired by the city's artifact collection and items created by local artists and Indigenous artisans. Products include Indigenous crafts, artisan jewelry, clothing, accessory, home decor, gardening, reproductions, stationery, toys, educational items, and literature. I would like at this time to congratulate Cheryl Blackman, the Director of Museum and Heritage Services, for her leadership, her inspiration. I know I've spent many hours with Cheryl and her team talking about the changes that we need to make, and the direction that museum needs to go in. And Cheryl, thank you so much for your outstanding leadership. Mayor Tory described the project, the art project, a revolution of love. We are grateful to have the talented, the beautiful AC Mensah, the film's choreographer, with us this morning. AC is an award-winning choreographer, dancer, movement director, TEDx talk speaker, and trailblazer of Afrofusion dance. She uses her voice and art to explore healing through storytelling. Some of her previous credit includes high-profile work with Rihanna, Drake, Arcade Fire, the Shaw Festival, and Toronto Raptors. I'm delighted to welcome AC to share a few words on her experience in creating a revolution of love.
Thank you so much, Deputy Thompson. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you so much to the City of Toronto for having me today. It's very exciting to be a part of this project. One of the things that I was often thinking about when thinking about a revolution of love, and also just thinking about the igniting of these historic sites in Toronto, is that we are working to heal our futures, but then in healing our futures, we're also working to heal our past. And then that healing is something that we need to be able to have in order to go forward in a healthier way. So a revolution of love is really a call to action. The words that were created through Assata Shakur, as well as Debbie Young and East Africa, who is a Toronto native, dub poet, and just all around phenomenal woman, was able to gift us with this song, and that through this song that we were able to ignite this team of people that were really willing to move forward and willing to understand what it meant to go forward with the revolution of love, and not just operating through the way that we've done it as a community, as communities around the world, where when we think of the word revolution, we're thinking of war, we're thinking of violence. And to rethink that and to see it differently and to see it with the mandate, with the mission of love, requires a lot of work. We have to be willing to see ourselves and be able to see past ourselves, and most of all, give empathy and love in order for us to be able to share the journey that we want to be able to move forward. And healing is such an integral part of who I am as an artist. And healing through my art has been something that I've been dedicated in doing for a number of years, and helping for me to remain connected to my ancestors. And those ancestors have such a presence within these historic sites as well, that when we step on the soil, we are also asking for permission. And when I worked at Fort York, we asked for permission. We didn't just come in and essentially colonialize our space with our new vision. We wanted to make sure that we were accepted, and that what we were bringing was also going to help everybody that has been on that land before us, and whose lives are actually in the soil, especially for Fort York as a historic site, as a battleground, to come to that site with a different vision, with a different thinking, something that can really drive us to move forward in a way that is going to be necessary for all of our healings. And that as we are working to decolonize these spaces, that we're really thinking about how can artists bring a new vision that also ignites these spaces, but then also helps to heal these spaces as well from the trauma that they have faced. And that through the trauma that was happening earlier on this year, for me, it was really about being able to put that into action, and through visions that I literally had to be able to power this piece, and working with Breen and Cheryl, it was very necessary to be able to see what a new future can look like as we envision these particular spaces in Toronto. So I'm grateful to have worked with such a phenomenal team, Winnie Mengesha and Lucius Tachasi as co-directors. Wayne Burns was our producer, and obviously the words of Assata Shakur and Debbie Young for the song of Revolution of Love. And once you hear the piece and once you hear the song, you understand that that is exactly the mandate and the mission that we need to be able to move forward. And that, being able to power our vision in the way that we need to be able to move forward, to see the world in the way that we want to manifest it. And that a lot of that work in terms of manifesting that starts now. And so this piece was that and more for me. And I'm very grateful for that. I want to be able to pass it on to Director X, Julian, can you share what it was like to mentor emerging artists, Toronto-based filmmakers with the series We Were Always Here?
It was great having a chance to talk to these directors beforehand as we're going through the editing process. They're all very, very talented. I mean, they didn't need any help, but it's good to be. It's good in the creative process to be able to speak to someone and get ideas going back and forth, and somebody can perhaps present a point of view that you might not have thought of, or just push you to trust your instincts and go. There's a large process that goes into creating something, and sometimes you go, oh, maybe I shouldn't, and I'm there to tell you, yeah, you should. So it was great, man. It was great to see this new talent. Great to see the things that they've done, the stories they've decided to tell. I think you're going to see some really powerful pieces that have something to say forcefully.
Thank you to all the speakers, and thank you for everyone who has joined us. We're now going to take questions from the media. So first up, we have Matt Bingley from Global. Go ahead, Matt.
Hi, good morning. Just to the creators, I just wanted to ask, when it comes to being able to present this outside of a virtual space, just because of the environment that we're in, it's going to take some time for that. But we have seen some people put films outside. Is that something that you'd like to sort of see some of this showcased so more people can experience it together?
I would love to see that happen. Personally, I would love to see a community of people, even if we did a screening at Fort York, for people to experience the work inside of the site would be phenomenal. And obviously trying to figure out and reimagine how we can consume art, and not just having it for it to happen digitally, but being able to figure out where in the city we can consume art, knowing that we're going to be going through COVID measures and stuff like that. But there's still something about being able to go somewhere and actually see it live, I think is really important. How about you, Director X?
I feel the same way. However we can get people to see this in the space. Online is good, but I think these have a lot more context when you're standing in the place that we're talking about and seeing the work, and then able to look around and kind of get a juxtaposition of where it is you are and what's going on.
I would love to have Maureen just weigh in on it really quickly, because we originally conceived this idea to be about both the interior spaces and the exterior spaces. And I wonder, Maureen, if you could just share a little bit about that.
Sure. So, public gatherings is definitely the heart and soul of the city. We want to serve our public. And due to the circumstances we are in, we launched everything online. But we do have the intention to do a public art component where we are projecting excerpts from all of the works onto the exteriors of the site. Right now, we're aiming to launch in February. Hopefully, we will be able to. And so it's definitely part of our plans moving forward.
And sorry, just as a follow-up to Mayor Tory, on a separate topic, today. Sorry?
Just before you do, I was just going to say, Michael Thompson, some people don't know this, as deputy mayor, has been made kind of a mayor to help us to embrace the winter, because we do far too little of that. And, who would have thought a year ago we'd be having all these drive-in events in cars and so on. So why not have a winter outdoor screening? And I'm delighted to hear this will be launching in February, and we'll be encouraging that in any way that we can to happen, because we're hardy souls, and I think it's important that we get on with this and we have it in the winter outdoors on the lands where a lot of this is trying to portray a different sense of history. So I will take that on with the deputy mayor to make sure that we try and make some stuff happen in the winter, because we're up for that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was safe to ask a question again. Just to Mayor Tory, today is vaccine day. A lot of people are talking about this, Board of Health included. I'm just wondering what you need to hear from the province on the logistics side of things to make sure that it is handled here in Toronto properly.
Well, phase one, which has to do with mainly the inoculation of long-term care staff and residents and some healthcare workers, is being handled entirely by the province, but we're standing by to support them in any way that we can. And we're spending our time, in the meantime, getting ready for phase two, which will come after the new year when you get into a much broader inoculation. So we need places to do it, staff to help with it, and all those kinds of things you would expect. And I will just say that under the leadership of Chief Pegg, we will have that done, and we will do it well, and we'll be ready. But we're here to help in phase one in any way that we can. But it's the province that's decided to take that on itself, and that's, I think, going to be a good way to do it.
Okay, and then last we have Momin from 680. Go ahead, Momin. Momin? Okay, Momin, if you have any questions, you can always email me. That's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Screening, Cheryl. We'll get that organized with all the team, okay? AC, you too, winter screening. We're going to be there with blankets and whatever we need to keep warm, okay?
Absolutely.
We'll bring some hot chocolate as well, Mr. Mayor.
Hot chocolate. Hot toddies would be better. What this chocolate business? Hot toddies.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
See y'all later.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
again. Great program. Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.